My husband said I need space to rediscover who I am. I'm going camping with Rachel from college for 3 weeks. I looked up from folding towels and said, okay, drive safe. While he was gone, I changed every lock, opened my own bank account, and moved my things to a place he'd never find. When he came home, he found an empty house and my number blocked. Turns out, I rediscovered myself way faster than he did. I'm leaving for 3 weeks to reconnect with nature, Michael announced on Tuesday morning, standing by our kitchen sink. Rachel invited me to this retreat in Montana. You remember Rachel, right? My study partner from college. I was matching socks, something I did every Tuesday without thinking. 7 years of matching his socks, folding them the way he liked, stacking them in neat rows. Montana sounds nice, I said, not looking up. My hands kept moving, pairing black sock with black sock, gray with gray. Michael waited, like he expected something more. An argument maybe. Tears. But I just kept folding. 7 years. That's how long I'd been organizing his life, like a personal secretary he didn't pay. 7 years of remembering his dentist appointments while he forgot my birthday. 7 years of cooking dinners he ate while scrolling his phone, barely noticing I was there. Before we go further, if you think everyone deserves to choose their own happiness, hit that subscribe button. It's free and helps stories like this reach people who need them. Now, let's see what happens next. That morning started like every Tuesday. I woke up at 6 without an alarm. My body just knew. Michael slept until 7:30, but his breakfast needed to be ready by 8. Toast with butter, not too much. Eggs scrambled soft, not hard. Orange juice in the blue cup, never the red one. These weren't things he asked for anymore. They were just things I did, like breathing. I moved around our kitchen in the dim light, knowing which floorboards creaked, stepping carefully around them so Michael could sleep. The toaster hummed. I cracked eggs into a bowl and whisked them slowly, watching the yellow and white swirl together. Michael liked his eggs a certain way. If they were too dry, he'd push them around his plate with a disappointed look. If they were too wet, he'd sigh and eat them anyway, like he was doing me a favor. By 7, I was sorting laundry in our bedroom. Whites in one pile, colors in another, delicates separate. Michael snored softly, his face buried in his pillow. The morning sun came through our blinds in stripes, making patterns on the floor. I watched him sleep for a minute. His hair stuck up funny on one side. His mouth was open a little bit. He looked peaceful, like nothing in the world bothered him. This was my favorite time of day. These quiet moments before he woke up and I had to be someone. Before I had to smile at jokes that weren't funny. Before I had to agree with opinions I didn't share. Before I had to be the version of me that made everything easier for Michael. I'd made cookies yesterday. Chocolate chip, his favorite. They sat on the counter in a container, and Michael would eat 3 with breakfast, then forget I made them by lunchtime. These little things I did had become automatic. Things I did without questioning why. He never said thank you anymore. He used to, maybe in the first year. But thank yous had faded like old photographs until they disappeared completely. I told myself it was fine. That married people didn't need to say thank you for every little thing. That he appreciated me in ways I couldn't see. Our dinner with my sister Emma and her husband was tonight at 6. I'd picked the restaurant 3 weeks ago, made the reservation, reminded Michael 5 times, and texted him again this morning. Emma was the only person who still called me by my full name, Charlotte. Everyone else, including Michael, just said Char. At the restaurant, Michael ordered my food without asking. She'll have the chicken salad, no onions. I'd been wanting to try their new pasta dish all week. I'd even mentioned it yesterday. But I smiled and said nothing, a skill I'd perfected like a pianist perfect scales. So there's this project at work I started, wanting to share something exciting. My boss said, "Did you catch the game last night?" Michael turned to Emma's husband, cutting me off mid-sentence. My words just vanished, like smoke. This happened a lot. I'd start talking, he'd redirect, and I'd just fade into the background noise. Nobody seemed to notice. Anyway, Michael said 15 minutes later, turning back to me like he'd just remembered I existed. "What were you saying about work?" But the moment was gone. I summarized in one sentence what would have been a 10-minute story. Michael nodded, but his eyes were already drifting to his phone. Emma followed me to the bathroom after we ordered. Does he always do that? She asked quietly. Do what? Talk over you. Act like what you say doesn't matter. Like you're just there to fill space. I wanted to defend him. To say he was just excited, or tired, or stressed. But the words stuck in my throat. Instead, I noticed how Emma's husband had listened when she talked. Really listened, asking questions, remembering details. He's just distracted, I finally said. Work stress. Emma looked at me in the mirror. Charlie, when's the last time he asked about your day? I couldn't remember. We drove home in silence, Michael on his phone the whole time. Back home, Michael collapsed on the couch with his laptop. Every few minutes he'd laugh at something, turning the screen toward me to show videos I didn't care about. Hey, look at this, he said suddenly, showing me a Facebook profile. A woman with red hair smiled from a beach somewhere tropical. Remember Rachel Martinez? From college? She just posted about this retreat thing in Montana. Says it changed her life. All about finding yourself, meditation, hiking, that stuff. He scrolled through her photos like he was studying for a test. We should get hiking boots, he said. Start getting in shape. But I knew he meant himself. In 7 years, Michael had never once suggested we exercise together. Until now. Until Rachel's Facebook posts about her amazing new life. Other things changed too. Suddenly there was teeth-whitening toothpaste in our bathroom. A new cologne appeared on his dresser. The gym membership he'd ignored for 2 years was suddenly important. He started checking himself in every mirror we passed, sucking in his stomach, fixing his hair. By 6, I was back to folding laundry. Michael's shirts had to be done a specific way. Collar flat, arms crossed, buttons lined up. My hands knew what to do without thinking. Emma's question kept replaying in my head. When had Michael last asked about my day? Really asked, really cared? When had he noticed I cleaned the house, or made his favorite dinner, or remembered to buy the special bread he liked? When had I become invisible? That's when Michael appeared in the doorway. I could feel it before he spoke. That shift in the air that means everything's about to change. Charlotte, he said. My full name. He only used my full name for serious things. I need to tell you something. His voice sounded practiced, like he'd rehearsed this in front of a mirror. I'm going to Montana for 3 weeks. To that retreat Rachel posted about. She invited me. I need to figure out who I am. Find myself. He stood there waiting, shifting his weight like a kid asking permission to stay out late. I held his shirt in my hands, smoothing a wrinkle that wasn't there. The words hung between us like fog. Okay, I said. Drive safe. Michael's mouth opened and closed like a fish. He'd expected something different. Tears, maybe. Yelling. Broken dishes. But I just kept folding, creating perfect creases, my hands steady. You're not upset? Why would I be upset? I placed his shirt on the bed with the others, all lined up perfectly. You need this. Everyone should find themselves. Confusion washed over his face like water. Relief came next, then something else. Disappointment, maybe. Had he wanted me to fight? To cry and beg him not to go? Char, you're amazing, he said, rushing forward to kiss my forehead. His lips were dry and he smelled like that new cologne. This is why I married you. You get me. You understand. Not, I love you. Not, you're important to me. Just that I understood. That I made his life easier. You should pack warm clothes, I said, turning back to the laundry. Montana's cold at night. Maybe those thermal shirts from the camping store. Right, yes, good idea. His voice was excited now, like a kid planning a birthday party. Rachel says the mountains are beautiful this time of year. She says it's life-changing. Rachel says. Already she was the expert on his new life. The next morning, Michael took the whole week off work. Something he'd never done for our anniversary or my birthday. He needed time to prepare for his journey. Our credit card took a beating. New hiking boots cost more than my monthly groceries. Expensive workout clothes he'd wear maybe twice. Apps about meditation and finding your true self. Look at these reviews, he said, shoving his phone in my face during breakfast. The Montana retreat looked like a fancy hotel in the mountains. Yoga decks, private cabins, mountain views everywhere. The price at the bottom made my stomach hurt. $4,000. More than our rent. More than we'd spent on any vacation together. It's an investment, Michael said, noticing my pause. In us. In our future. Our future. While planning a trip with another woman. The next few days were a blur of shopping bags and fashion shows. Michael modeled every outfit, asking which colors looked best for photos. I suggested the green jacket because it matched his eyes. He beamed at me like I'd solved world hunger. Thursday night, I helped him pack. Folding his new clothes carefully, arranging everything so it fit just right. Rachel says we should pack light, he said. Rachel thinks morning hikes are special. Rachel believes in disconnecting from phones. Every mention of her name was a tiny cut. But I'd learned not to feel them one at a time. They just piled up into a general numbness. These shirts won't show sweat, I said, folding his new hiking clothes the same way I'd folded his work shirts for 7 years. Michael looked at me with something like wonder. How are you so perfect about this? Perfect. Like my reaction to betrayal was a test I'd passed. Friday morning, Emma called demanding coffee. We met at our usual spot, a little cafe where the owner knew our orders and always saved our favorite table. Emma didn't waste time. She grabbed my hand hard enough to hurt. He's literally going on a romantic vacation with another woman. It's a self-discovery retreat, I corrected, stirring sugar into my coffee with robot movements. Stop it. Stop pretending this is normal. I'm supporting my husband's growth, I said, meeting her eyes with a smile that felt fake. Emma studied my face like she was reading a book in a language she barely knew. Her expression changed from worry to confused to something that looked like understanding. She leaned back, eyes wide. Charlotte Marie Peterson, what are you planning? I'm planning to be supportive. Something in my voice made Emma release my hand. A slow smile spread across her face. The kind she got when she figured out a puzzle before everyone else. How long have you been planning this? I don't know what you mean. Charlie, I've known you since we were kids. You planned revenge on Sarah Winters in 8th grade for 3 months before anyone knew she'd copied your science project. This calm act, this perfect wife thing. You're planning something big. I took a sip of coffee. Michael needs to find himself. It's important to give him space. Emma's smile grew bigger. Oh my God, you're really going to do it. This is going to be amazing. That evening, while Michael admired himself in every mirror wearing his new hiking clothes, I moved through our apartment with my phone, taking pictures of everything that mattered. The coffee maker I'd bought with my bonus from work. The couch I'd saved for 6 months to afford. The paintings my mom had given me when I moved out. 7 years of stuff, and I could trace almost everything valuable back to my own money, my own choices. Michael was too busy looking at himself to notice. He practiced smiling different ways, probably imagining how he'd look in Rachel's photos. Do these pants make me look younger? He asked, showing me his profile. You look like yourself, I said. It wasn't really an answer, but he was happy with it. That night, after Michael fell asleep, still wearing his new hiking socks, I sat in our living room with my laptop, looking at the apartment I'd secretly rented 2 months ago. Just a backup plan, I'd told myself. Insurance against the growing distance between us. The landlord had been kind, not asking too many questions when I requested privacy. Maybe she recognized something in my face. A story she'd heard before. The apartment was small but bright. Windows that actually opened. A kitchen with morning sunlight. I'd been moving things there slowly, carefully. Telling Michael I was donating stuff to charity or helping Emma redecorate. A lamp here, some books there. It had been waiting patiently. Like a life raft I'd built while convincing myself the boat wasn't sinking. Saturday morning arrived with sunshine that felt like the universe was helping me. Michael had been awake since 5, checking and rechecking his bags. Arranging his new hiking clothes in the order he'd wear them. He bounced around our apartment like a balloon filled with too much air. I made his coffee one last time. The way he liked it, 2 sugars and cream. He drank it fast, barely tasting it. His phone kept buzzing with text messages. Each one made him smile in a way that twisted something in my chest. Not jealousy exactly. More like watching a stranger use your favorite mug. The car will be here in 10 minutes, he announced, though I hadn't asked. He was already dressed for Montana. New hiking pants, special shirt, boots that squeaked when he walked. He looked like a store mannequin pretending to be adventurous. When the car pulled up outside, Michael grabbed his bags like a kid going to summer camp. At the door, he paused. Like he suddenly remembered he had a wife to say goodbye to. The kiss he put on my forehead was light as air. Already somewhere else before his lips even touched me. "I'll come back different," he promised, his hand on the doorknob. "Better. We'll start fresh." The words sounded like something he'd read in a book. Before I could respond, his phone rang. Rachel's name lit up the screen, and his whole face changed. "Hey, yes, I'm coming now." His voice got higher, excited, as he walked toward the car. He forgot to close our front door. I closed it softly, listening to his happy voice fade as the car drove away. Through the kitchen window, I watched the car disappear around the corner. Michael was visible through the back window, hands moving wildly as he talked. Lost in whatever Rachel was saying. The silence that followed felt different. Not empty, but full. Like the quiet before a storm starts. I walked to our coffee maker and made myself a cup of the expensive coffee. The good stuff I usually saved for guests. Michael preferred cheap coffee anyway. 30 minutes later, Emma's car pulled into our parking lot right on time. She got out carrying boxes and a bottle of wine, her face somewhere between partner in crime and party planner. "Freedom Day," she announced, walking past me into the apartment. I brought supplies. Before I could ask what she meant, a moving truck appeared with my brother David behind the wheel. He must have left home at dawn to get here so fast. David climbed out wearing sunglasses and a huge smile. "You think I'd miss this?" He pulled me into a hug that smelled like his aftershave and the energy drinks he'd probably been drinking all morning. I made a playlist. It's called New Life Sounds. What I'd imagined as a quiet, careful process became something else entirely. David took charge immediately, measuring furniture and calculating truck space like he'd done this a million times. Emma connected her phone to our speakers, filling the apartment with carefully chosen songs about freedom and fresh starts that somehow made me laugh instead of cry. By noon, it felt less like moving day and more like a celebration. David opened champagne he'd apparently brought just for this moment. He poured it into fancy glasses Michael had always wanted to sell. To Charlotte, he toasted, for finally choosing herself. We clinked glasses in my half-empty living room, sunlight streaming through windows that looked bigger without Michael's enormous TV blocking half the wall. Mrs. Kim from next door showed up at 12:30 with sandwiches and a knowing look. "I saw Michael leave with fancy new bags for hiking," she said, setting food on our kitchen counter. "My husband had the same bags when he left me for his coworker 10 years ago. Men are predictable creatures." She squeezed my hand, her eyes understanding in a way that only comes from experience. "You need help? My son has truck." As we packed, the truth of my marriage became obvious in what belonged to who. The coffee maker Michael bragged about to friends. My money. The comfortable mattress pad that finally helped my sore back. My purchase after Michael said it cost too much. The kitchen supplies I'd collected from yard sales and discount stores. All mine, while he complained about restaurant prices. My grandmother's dishes, which Michael called old-fashioned and wanted to sell. Emma wrapped them carefully in bubble wrap, remembering how we'd used them at my college graduation party. "Look at this," David said, standing in what was clearly Michael's corner of the living room. His contributions stood out by being tasteless. The ugly chair that didn't match anything. The huge TV he'd insisted we needed. The exercise bike that held more dirty clothes than it ever held him. 7 years, I said quietly, looking at how easily our life split into mine and his. 7 years and everything worth keeping fits in one truck. David loaded boxes while Emma kept labeling everything with comments. Charlie's grandmother's dishes that Michael wanted to pawn. Photo albums from before Michael when Charlie smiled real smiles. Emma documented everything with her phone, creating what she called evidence of liberation. Photos of me actually laughing as we found Michael's stash of protein powder that expired in 2018. Videos of Emma dramatically reading the motivational quotes he'd taped to our bathroom mirror. By 3, the truck was loaded. Our apartment, his apartment now, looked strange with half its stuff gone. Like a smile missing teeth. But instead of sad, it felt honest. This was what Michael had contributed to our life together. Empty space and ugly furniture. I stood at his sock drawer with a pen and paper. The note needed to be perfect. Not mean, not dramatic. Just true. I wrote it 3 times until the words felt right. Michael, I took your advice and found myself. Turns out I was here all along, just buried under 7 years of being who you needed me to be. The divorce papers are with your lawyer. I hope Rachel helps you find whatever you're looking for. You deserve each other. Charlotte. I folded it once and placed it between his hiking socks and his dress socks, where he'd find it only after the panic wore off. Emma waited by the door as I walked through the apartment one last time. Each room held memories, but they felt like photographs of someone else's life now. The kitchen where I'd cooked thousands of meals he barely noticed. The living room where we'd sat together, but separately, him on his phone while I read books he never asked about. The bedroom where we'd slept side by side like roommates who happened to share a bed. I locked the door with my key for the last time, sliding it under the mat where we'd always kept the spare. The click of the lock felt final. Satisfying. Like the last piece of a puzzle fitting into place. The vehicles pulled away from Michael's apartment, my former home, like a parade heading somewhere better. Emma drove the truck while I sat in the passenger seat, watching familiar streets become new territory. David followed in his car, turning our escape into something that felt less like running and more like winning. My new apartment building sat on a quiet street downtown, far enough from our old neighborhood that I wouldn't accidentally see Michael at the store. The afternoon sun hit the windows of my third-floor unit, making them glow like promises. As we pulled into the parking lot, my phone buzzed. Without looking, I knew Michael had started discovering that Rachel's expectations didn't match his fantasies. Home sweet home, Emma said, pulling the truck to a stop. Your new life starts now. We worked like a team that had practiced. David and his friend handled furniture. Emma directed traffic with her label system. Everyone moved with purpose, making sure everything landed in the right room. By early evening, the bones of my new life were in place. The apartment smelled like cardboard and possibility. My grandmother's dishes sat in kitchen cabinets that caught evening light. Her rocking chair fit perfectly by the window, angled to watch sunsets I'd actually have time to notice. Emma opened wine while David put together my bed frame. The one I'd bought last year when Michael complained our mattress was too soft, though he never offered to help buy a new one. A toast, David announced once the major pieces were in place, raising his beer. To Charlotte, for having the courage to choose herself. We drank surrounded by boxes, sitting on my grandmother's rug that Michael had wanted to replace with something less boring. The apartment felt like wearing clothes that actually fit after years of squeezing into someone else's size. After everyone left, promising to return tomorrow for phase 2, I stood alone in my new space. That's when it hit me. A wave of sadness so strong I had to grab the kitchen counter. But I wasn't mourning Michael. I was mourning the woman who'd spent 7 years folding someone else's laundry like it was her life's purpose. The woman who'd turned down a promotion because Michael needed dinner at 6 sharp. The woman who'd stopped painting because the spare room had to be his office, then his gym, then his storage space for equipment he never used. The tears came suddenly. I slid down the kitchen wall until I sat on the floor, crying for all the possibilities that had died quiet deaths. The children we never had because Michael wasn't ready, then because the timing wasn't right, then because he needed to find himself first. The art classes I'd skipped because weekends were for his golf games. The friendship with my college roommate that faded because Michael found her too opinionated. Emma found me there an hour later, having returned with stuff she'd forgotten in her car. She didn't ask questions. Just sat beside me on the kitchen floor, holding me while I cried for the woman I'd been. Not because I wanted her back, but because she deserved better than she'd known to ask for. I wasted 7 years, I whispered. No, Emma said firmly. You learned for 7 years. Now you know exactly who you don't want to be. The tears eventually stopped, leaving me empty but somehow cleaner. Emma helped me up, made tea in my own kitchen, using my own kettle and my own cup. We sat at my small dining table, the one I'd bought at a yard sale that Michael called ugly, and watched the city lights appear outside my window. "I'm proud of you," Emma said quietly. "I've been waiting for you to come back to us." That night, I slept sideways across my bed, sprawling into space that had always been his. The silence felt different here. Not lonely, but full. Like a blank page waiting for writing. Sunday arrived with 15 emails from Michael. I didn't open them, but Emma took screenshots for documentation and couldn't resist sharing highlights over morning coffee. "Listen to this," she said, reading from her phone. "How could you abandon our home?" Our home? The man who didn't know when garbage day was suddenly cares about our home. The emails went from confusion to anger to begging in record time. "Where are you?" became "This is crazy" became "We need to talk like adults" became "Please just call me." Monday brought the Facebook post. Michael, who'd always mocked social media as stupid, suddenly found it useful. He posted vague things about betrayal and life's unexpected challenges, clearly fishing for sympathy without giving actual details. "Sometimes the person you trust most becomes a stranger," Emma read from his profile. The comments are gold. Look, his coworker asked if he's okay, and he said, "I'm learning that not everyone deserves your loyalty." The man who left you for another woman is talking about loyalty. Our mutual friends started reaching out to me privately. I kept my answers simple and factual. Michael went on a self-discovery journey with another woman. I gave him the space he needed. The truth needed no decoration. Tuesday morning, my phone exploded with forwarded Instagram stories. 3 different people sent me the same video, each with variations of "you need to see this" and laughing faces. Rachel Martinez, looking nothing like her filtered Facebook photos, stood in what looked like the Montana Retreats parking lot. Her red hair was messy, her makeup smeared, and her expression furious. "I need everyone to know," she announced to her phone camera, "that Michael Peterson is a lying manipulator who told me his marriage was over. He said his wife knew about us reconnecting. He said she supported this journey." The next clip showed her inside what looked like a hotel room. Michael's new hiking gear visible in the background. This pathological liar had me believing we were both divorced, both free to explore our connection. Then I called to add my name to the reservation, and guess what? It's under Mr. and Mrs. Peterson. The final video was perfect. Rachel stood by a mountain stream holding Michael's brand new hiking boots. The ones he'd spent forever selecting. "You want to find yourself, Mike," she shouted at the camera before throwing the boots into the water. "Find yourself single." The boots disappeared downstream while Rachel talked about midlife crisis stereotypes and men who couldn't grow up. By Tuesday afternoon, the video had 15,000 views. Someone had added it to our high school's alumni Facebook page with the caption, "Remember when these two dated sophomore year?" Some things never change. Wednesday, I was setting up my classroom for afternoon art when Emma's husband texted. You'll never guess who I just picked up from the airport. His updates came in real time. Michael, returning 10 days early from his transformative 3-week journey, spent the entire ride from the airport complaining about ungrateful wives and crazy ex-girlfriends. He seems to believe Rachel lost her mind over nothing and that you completely overreacted to a simple vacation. Emma texted, "He just said she's probably at her brother's crying. Should I tell him?" "No," I replied. "Let him find out himself." The final text came at 3:45. Just dropped him off. He's about to discover what finding yourself really costs. Mrs. Kim called me that evening, her voice mixing gossip with satisfaction. Your husband sat on front steps crying like a baby, she reported. Screaming at phone, pulling his hair. Very dramatic. My son filmed it for his social media. The image of Michael, controlled Michael, falling apart on the steps he'd obsessed over keeping clean, was almost too perfect. Thursday morning my phone rang at exactly 7. Susan Peterson, Michael's mom, liked to call early for what she termed handling difficult matters. I recognized the number but let it ring 3 times before answering, giving myself time to breathe steady. Charlotte, her voice cut through the line like scissors through paper. What you've done to my son is unforgivable. I sat at my small kitchen table, watching morning light paint patterns across my new apartment walls. Susan had always used her disapproval like a weapon. making comments about my cooking, my job, my inability to give her grandchildren on her schedule. Good morning to you too, Susan. Don't you dare take that tone with me. You've embarrassed Michael publicly. The entire neighborhood is gossiping about how you abandoned him. He left for Montana with another woman, I said, stirring honey into my tea. I simply moved while he was gone. It was a camping trip, her voice climbed higher. An innocent reunion with an old friend. You've blown this completely out of proportion. I almost laughed. Susan had spent 7 years telling me I was too sensitive, too emotional, too everything. Now she wanted me to be understanding about her son's 3-week vacation with his ex-girlfriend. Susan, I said slowly, your 40-year-old son ran away with his ex-girlfriend for a spiritual awakening. That's not camping. That's a midlife crisis with a side of cheating. How dare you? He told me himself. Rachel Martinez, his first love. He needed to find himself with her in Montana. Those were his exact words, not mine. The silence that followed was so complete I could hear her breathing change. Susan Peterson, who had an answer for everything, who'd spent years subtly putting me down at every family gathering, had nothing to say. I'm calling the police, she finally managed. You've stolen from him. That's theft. I took my grandmother's dishes, my clothes, and furniture I bought with my own money. If Michael wants to discuss ownership, he can contact my lawyer. Your lawyer? She sounded genuinely shocked. You've already involved lawyers after everything we've done for you? Everything they'd done for me. Like the Christmas Susan gave everyone else nice gifts, but handed me a cookbook about eating healthy. Or the birthday dinner where she seated me at the kids' table because someone needs to supervise them. Or the countless times she'd introduced me as Michael's wife without using my name, as if I was a position rather than a person. Susan, I need to go. I have a class to teach. This isn't over, she warned. I'll make sure everyone knows what kind of woman you really are. They already know what kind of woman I am, I said. I'm the kind who refuses to be anyone's backup plan. I hung up before she could respond, my hands surprisingly steady. Friday afternoon brought a different Peterson to my phone. Mark, the successful brother, the lawyer who'd made partner before 30 and never let anyone forget it. His name on my screen meant Susan had sent her best weapon. Charlotte, he began using what Michael called his lawyer voice. I think we should discuss this situation rationally. Hello, Mark. Look, I understand you're upset. Mike made a mistake, but this response seems extreme. I put him on speaker while I graded art projects. My students' creativity spread across my dining table in explosions of color and imagination. Which part seems extreme? The part where I moved out while he was with another woman, or the part where I hired a lawyer? The part where you're destroying my brother over a simple misunderstanding. A misunderstanding? I repeated, adding a gold star to Tommy's painting. Is that what we're calling it? Mike says you gave him permission to go. That you understood he needed space. I told him I hoped he found what he was looking for. And he did. Consequences. Mark sighed heavily. The sound of a man used to winning arguments realizing he'd already lost this one. Charlotte, be reasonable. You know Mike's always been searching. Remember Thanksgiving 2 years ago when he spent the entire dinner texting someone while I served your family alone? Yes, I remember. Or your anniversary last year. The one he forgot, but somehow remembered Rachel's birthday on Facebook. That anniversary. Mark went quiet. I could practically hear him rethinking his approach. We always wondered why you stayed, he admitted finally, his lawyer voice dropping to something more human. Mom said you were lucky to have him, but Dad and we saw how he treated you. Like his personal assistant, I supplied. Or did you prefer when he called my teaching job a silly hobby? That was at Easter, right after I'd won Teacher of the Year. He was jealous, Mark said quietly. You were successful at something meaningful. He was just existing. It was the most honest thing any Peterson had ever said to me. Then you understand why I left. I understand. But Mom won't stop until she gets her way. You know how she is. That sounds like a Michael problem, not a Charlotte problem. Saturday morning brought evidence of Michael's financial panic. My lawyer forwarded his increasingly desperate emails with professional detachment. Michael had discovered he couldn't access my savings account. The one with my grandmother's $50,000 inheritance and 5 years of careful saving from teaching bonuses and summer school. The joint checking account told a different story. After I withdrew my contributions, documented carefully over 7 years, Michael was left with exactly $342.18. His deposits had been occasional at best, usually just enough to cover his personal expenses, while my teacher's salary handled rent, bills, groceries, and life. His emails revealed a man discovering adulting for the first time at 40. What? As the rent payment? When is the electric bill due? What's our streaming password? How do I access the insurance information? 7 years. 7 years of marriage, and he didn't know our rent payment. Didn't know I'd been paying it mostly alone for the last 2 years after his career change became permanent unemployment. Emma, meanwhile, had transformed into a social media detective. She called Saturday evening barely containing her excitement. "I've had enough of his victim act," she announced. Check Facebook. The album she created was titled Michael's Journey of Self-Discovery, a Timeline. She'd been thorough. Screenshots of texts Michael had sent me over the past 2 months, each one showing increasing distance and lies. Photos from mutual friends showed him at fancy restaurants on nights he'd claimed to be working late. The receipt for the Montana retreat, for $1,000 charge to our joint credit card, featured prominently. But the masterpiece was the comment section. Michael's high school friends had started sharing their own stories. Remember sophomore year when Mike was finding himself with 4 different girls at once? Didn't he pull this same spiritual journey thing with his college girlfriend? My cousin dated him briefly. He disappeared for a week with his ex who turned out not to be his cousin. The pattern was clear. I wasn't Michael's first abandoned partner. I was just the one who'd stayed the longest. By Sunday, Susan had called 8 more times. Mark had sent 3 texts apologizing for his mother, and Michael's emails had evolved from angry to pleading to threatening legal action for intentional emotional distress. But the most interesting message came from an unexpected source. Rachel's best friend from high school, Nicole. "Charlotte, you don't know me, but I wanted you to know Rachel had no idea Michael was still married. She's horrified. Also, this isn't his first time pulling this stunt. My sister dated him 4 years before you. Same story, different woman. Stay strong. For years before me. While we were already together." The revelation should have hurt, but instead it freed something inside me. I wasn't special to Michael, not in good ways or bad. I was just the one who'd stayed long enough to make leaving inconvenient. Monday morning brought the kind of perfect justice that felt almost scripted. I was teaching my first grade art class, helping 6-year-olds create self-portraits with crayons, when my phone buzzed with a text from my lawyer. Michael just discovered the utility situation. His emails are colorful. Apparently, the power company had shut off service at 8 sharp when the final bill in my name came due. Michael, who'd never paid a utility bill in 7 years, had no idea services required actual names on accounts, credit checks, and deposit payments. The gas company wanted $250 upfront. Electric needed $300. Internet and cable each required deposits because Michael's credit score, something else I'd managed for him, had apparently crashed during his spiritual journey spending spree. "Miss Peterson, why are you smiling?" asked Jake, one of my students, pain on his nose. "Sometimes good things happen to patient people," I told him, helping him draw paper ears for his portrait's background. During lunch, I checked my personal email to find a forward from David. Michael had posted in our neighborhood Facebook group asking if anyone knew affordable utility companies, complaining about unfair deposit requirements. The comments were brutal. Mrs. Kim had responded, "Maybe if you paid your bills instead of running to Montana with girlfriends, companies would trust you." The rent situation was even better. Michael discovered that without my income, he couldn't qualify to renew the lease. Without my signature, he couldn't break it. The rent payment was due in 2 weeks and his $342 wasn't going to cover it. According to my lawyer, he tried to access my grandmother's inheritance through some bizarre legal theory that marriage meant automatic ownership of all money. The bank manager had apparently laughed before explaining that inheritance remains separate property. Susan refused to co-sign for anything, claiming she needed to teach him responsibility. Mark wouldn't lend money, citing his own family expenses. And Rachel Martinez, sweet Rachel who'd promised to help him find himself, had not only blocked him on all platforms, but was now posting couple photos with her new yoga instructor boyfriend, #AuthenticConnection. Tuesday afternoon, I was organizing art supplies when the school secretary knocked. There's a situation in the parking lot. A man claiming to be your husband. Through the window, I watched Michael standing by his car, arguing with our security guard. His hair was greasy, his clothes wrinkled, and he kept pointing wildly toward the building. Four parents stood nearby, phones out, documenting everything. Amanda Jackson, whose son was in my class, marched up to him. "Excuse me, are you supposed to be here?" "I need to see my wife," Michael said loud enough that I could hear him through the closed window. "Ex-wife," Amanda corrected. "And she's teaching. You know, working. That thing responsible adults do." Sarah Gwynn joined her. "Isn't this the guy who abandoned her for some redhead from high school?" "It was a spiritual journey," Michael protested. "Is that what we're calling it now?" asked Kelly Martinez, Mrs. Kim's daughter. "My mom says you cried on your front steps for 2 hours. Very spiritual." The security guard eventually convinced Michael to leave, but not before 8 parents had filmed the encounter and shared it in our school's parent group chat with captions like, "This is why we love Miss Peterson," and "The garbage took itself out." That evening, Amanda stopped by my apartment with lasagna and a business card. "My sister's a divorce attorney. Better than whoever you have now. She'll annihilate this man just for fun." Wednesday brought an unexpected call. Michael's boss, Gregory, sounded genuinely apologetic. "Charlotte, I'm calling as a courtesy. We had to let Michael go." I set down my coffee cup carefully. "Oh, he missed the Anderson presentation while in Montana. Our biggest client." Then when he returned, he told Mr. Anderson that material success was meaningless compared to spiritual growth. He actually suggested our client try hiking instead of business expansion. I bit my lip to keep from laughing. That sounds like Michael found himself. "There's more," Gregory continued. HR discovered he'd been using sick days for what he logged as therapy appointments starting 2 months ago. "But you weren't in therapy together, were you?" "No, we weren't." He was meeting Rachel Martinez. "His coworkers have forwarded me some concerning emails where he blamed his work problems on you. Called you controlling and emotionally manipulative. Several people came forward to say they'd seen him at restaurants with another woman when he claimed to be at client meetings." The irony was perfect. Michael, who couldn't remember to buy bread without 4 reminders, calling me controlling. The man I'd had to guide through basic life tasks like a navigation app, claiming I was manipulative. "His final paycheck will be mailed to his parents' address," Gregory concluded. "And Charlotte, we all knew you were the reason he functioned as long as he did." Thursday arrived with the ultimate consequence. My attorney, Rebecca Chen, hired quietly 2 months ago when Michael's late text started, had Michael served at his parents' house during their Thursday evening family dinner. She'd waited for maximum impact, knowing Susan invited their entire extended family for these weekly gatherings. The terms were straightforward. Clean split, no alimony either way. I keep my savings and apartment. He keeps the apartment lease and associated debt. Simple, fair, exactly what 2 adults ending a marriage should expect. Michael's counteroffer arrived Friday morning, and Rebecca actually called me laughing. "You have to see this," she said. "I'm sending it now." He was demanding half my inheritance because marriage is a partnership where all assets are shared. He wanted lifetime alimony because I had abandoned him during a mental health crisis, citing his spiritual journey as a medical necessity. He claimed emotional distress damages because I had maliciously sabotaged his self-discovery process. The best part was his description of events. My wife vindicatively abandoned our marital home while I was attending a therapeutic retreat for stress-related mental health issues. "A therapeutic retreat," Rebecca repeated, still laughing. "With his ex-girlfriend. For his mental health." What happens next? The judge will read this, probably have the same reaction I did, and suggest Michael get actual therapy. No court is giving him a penny after he abandoned you for another woman. By Friday afternoon, word had spread through our social circles. Michael Peterson, who'd spent 7 years being supported by his teacher wife, was now living in his childhood bedroom, unemployed, and trying to sue me for abandoning him during his affair. The school principal, Mrs. Chin, called with an offer. I can get you a mortgage approval for your apartment. With your teaching history and that inheritance as down payment, you're golden. Let Michael figure out his situation alone. As the week ended, I stood in my apartment looking at the purchase agreement Mrs. Chin had arranged. Below, the city hummed with life. Somewhere across town, Michael was probably sitting in his parents' house, trying to figure out how his spiritual journey had led him back to the bedroom where he'd grown up. Rachel Martinez posted another yoga photo with her new boyfriend. Susan Peterson complained to anyone who'd listen about her son's ungrateful wife. And I signed my name on the line that would make this apartment truly mine. Bought with my money in my name, for my future. The pen felt heavy as I signed the purchase agreement, making the apartment officially mine. For weeks had passed since I'd walked away from Michael's apartment, my former life, and each day had brought new revelations about the man I'd married and the woman I'd been. Saturday morning arrived fresh and clear. Emma and I had claimed our usual corner table at Bean Street Cafe, the one by the window where we could watch downtown wake up. I was telling her about my student's latest project when her face suddenly went pale. Don't turn around, she whispered, gripping her mug. Of course I turned around. Michael stood in the doorway with Susan and a woman I didn't recognize. Older, wearing a church outfit and pearls, holding a journal like armor. He spotted me immediately, his face shifting into an expression of practiced sadness. They walked toward us with the determination of people on a mission. Charlotte, Michael began, loud enough for the entire cafe to hear. I've come to ask for your forgiveness. The stranger opened her journal, pen ready like she was about to record something important. Susan stood behind her son, head high in defiance, daring me to make a scene. Michael, I said calmly. This is inappropriate. Please just hear me out. He launched into what was clearly a rehearsed speech. I've been doing a lot of thinking about us. About marriage. About second chances. I realize now that my journey of self-discovery was really just running from the best thing in my life. Emma snorted into her cappuccino. I want to work on us, he continued, his voice carrying across the now silent cafe. I want to try counseling. Real counseling. Not the kind where the door opened and everything shifted. Rachel Martinez walked in with a man who could only be her yoga instructor boyfriend. Tall, athletic, hair in a bun that actually worked. She froze when she saw Michael, her eyes widening with recognition and something that looked like rage. Oh my God, she said, her voice cutting through Michael's speech. Is this the married man who lied about being separated? She walked straight up to our table, ignoring Susan's attempt to block her path. Charlotte, right? Honey, you're amazing for putting up with him as long as you did. This pathological liar told me you knew about us. That you supported our reconnection. The church woman's journal snapped shut. She looked at Susan with barely hidden horror. You said he was the victim here. This is a misunderstanding, Susan started. But the woman was already backing away. I don't witness lies, she said, heading for the door. And I certainly won't be telling Reverend Thompson that Michael deserves the church's support. Rachel wasn't finished. 2 months, she told me, her yoga instructor boyfriend standing protectively beside her. He'd been messaging me for 2 months before that Montana trip. Planning, lying, telling me about his loveless marriage while you were home doing his laundry. Michael's face had turned the color of tomatoes. Rachel, please don't, she held up a hand. I'm done with your games. Charlotte, I'm sorry. If I'd known the truth, I never would have. She shook her head and left with her boyfriend, but not before adding, get help, Mike. Real help. The entire cafe was watching now, phones not so subtly recording. Michael stood there, his grand gesture collapsed around him like a poorly built sandcastle. We should go, Susan hissed, grabbing his arm. They left, but the damage was done. Within an hour, someone had posted the video to our neighborhood Facebook page with the caption, "Local man tries to win back wife he cheated on, gets exposed by his mistress." Saturday afternoon, I was organizing my bookshelf, a luxury of space I'd never had before, when my phone buzzed with notifications from neighbors. Michael was in my building's parking lot with a guitar. Through my window, I watched him position himself under what he must have thought was my apartment. He was actually 3 windows off, serenading Mr. Chen's living room. He started playing and I recognized the opening chords immediately. Not our first dance song, not the song from our wedding, but Wonderwall. Rachel's favorite song from high school according to her old Facebook posts. My neighbors had already gathered. Mr. Wilson from 4C was filming. The college students from 1B were laughing openly. Mr. Chen opened his window and yelled, "Wrong apartment, Romeo," and "Terrible song choice." Building security arrived within minutes, followed shortly by police after Michael refused to leave. I watched from above as he argued with the officers, gesturing wildly with a guitar. It's not stalking, it's a romantic gesture. I'm trying to save my marriage. Sir, she's filed for divorce. This is harassment. The video hit the neighborhood Facebook page within an hour. The comments were ruthless. This is why she left him. Imagine being 40 and not knowing your wife's favorite song. Team Charlotte forever. Monday's court-ordered mediation was held in a plain conference room that smelled like burnt coffee and regret. Michael arrived with a laptop and a portable projector, dressed in his best suit, the one I'd helped him pick 3 years ago. Rebecca leaned over to whisper, he brought visual aids. This should be entertaining. Michael set up his PowerPoint with the confidence of someone who'd never been wrong about anything. The title slide read "The Case for Reconciliation, an Analysis of Emotional Abandonment." The mediator, a tired-looking woman named Janet, raised an eyebrow but said nothing. Michael clicked through slides about his journey of self-discovery, complete with bullet points about personal growth and spiritual awakening. He had charts showing the emotional damage of my abandonment. He'd even included inspirational quotes about forgiveness. As you can see, he said, pointing to a pie chart, my wife's departure interrupted crucial personal development, causing irreparable harm to my self-actualization process. Janet stopped him. Mr. Peterson, do you understand what marriage is? Of course. It's a partnership. Then why did you leave your partner for another woman? It was a journey of Rebecca opened her folder. I have 7 years of bank statements showing my client paid 75% of household expenses. Here's a birthday card where Mr. Peterson wrote, "Thanks for being like a second mom." Here are testimonies from 14 neighbors about Mrs. Peterson covering for his repeated absences. She slid papers across the table with surgical precision. Here's Mr. Peterson's work evaluations citing excessive absences. Here are credit card statements showing thousands spent on his spiritual journey from joint accounts. Enough, Janet said. Mr. Peterson, your PowerPoint about emotional abandonment while you were literally with another woman is remarkable. I'm recommending the original settlement stands. During the break, I went to the water fountain in the hallway. A man approached. Tall, tired-looking, something familiar about his eyes. You're Charlotte. I nodded cautiously. I'm Rachel's ex-husband, Tom. I wanted you to know something. He pulled out his phone, showing me Facebook messages dating back 3 months. Michael and Rachel, planning their reunion while we were both still married. Michael calling me his anchor, saying he needed to wait for his bonus before leaving me because he needed to appear financially stable. He didn't get the bonus, Tom said, because he was too busy planning his escape to do his job. One message stood out. Once I get this bonus, I'll have the financial security to leave Charlotte. She served her purpose. Served my purpose. Like I was a tool, not a person. Thank you, I told Tom. I'm sorry you went through this too. Rachel's not a bad person, he said. Just confused. And Michael, he's a parasite who finds confused people. I gave the messages to Rebecca, who added them to our filing with a smile that promised victory. Rebecca tucked the Facebook messages into her folder with the satisfied expression of someone who'd just been handed a winning hand. We walked back into the mediation room where Michael sat hunched in his chair, his PowerPoint frozen on a slide titled, "The Economics of Emotional Support." For months. That's how long it took from that Tuesday announcement to this moment in the courthouse. For months of Michael's collapse. For months of my rebuilding. For months of discovering that the hardest part of leaving wasn't the leaving, it was believing I deserved to. The divorce papers sat on the table between us like a bridge we were both about to burn from opposite sides. I pulled out my favorite pen, the one my grandmother had given me for college graduation. Michael had borrowed it countless times, never returning it, always leaving it in random places. Today it was exactly where I'd placed it in my purse. Michael fumbled through his jacket pockets, then his briefcase, finally looking up at his lawyer with embarrassment. "Can I borrow a pen?" Of course he needed to borrow a pen. The man who'd spent 7 years borrowing my patience, my money, my dreams, needed to borrow a pen to sign away our marriage. His lawyer slid him a basic pen, the kind you get in bulk at office stores. Michael signed his name with the borrowed pen, pressing too hard like he always did when he was angry, leaving marks on the pages beneath. I signed with smooth, deliberate strokes, my name flowing across the paper like water finding its way home. As we gathered our things, Michael made one last attempt. He waited until his lawyer had stepped away, until Rebecca was packing her briefcase, until it was just us by the elevator. "Char," he said, using that soft voice he'd perfected for apologies he didn't mean. "We could try again. I know who I am now. I know what I lost." I looked at him, really looked at him for the last time as his wife. His hair was thinner, his clothes loose from stress weight loss, his eyes holding that desperate gleam of someone who'd gambled everything and lost. Standing there in his borrowed suit confidence and borrowed pen signature, he was exactly who he'd always been. Someone who existed only in relation to what others could provide him. "Michael," I said, my voice carrying no anger, no satisfaction, just simple truth. "You did find yourself. This is who you are. And I found who I am without you." The elevator arrived with a soft ding. I stepped in alone, leaving him in the hallway, still holding someone else's pen. My apartment had transformed in 4 months from emergency shelter to actual home. Books lined shelves Michael would have called messy, their spines creating a rainbow of stories he'd never asked about. Art-covered walls he would have called impractical. Pieces I'd collected from students over the years, paintings from local artists at street fairs he'd thought were money wasted. The kitchen perpetually smelled like fresh cookies because I'd returned to baking without timeline or obligation. Sunday cookies because I wanted them, not because Sunday dinner required them. Experimental flavors Michael would have called weird. Lemon lavender, rosemary sea salt, chocolate orange. Cooling on racks he would have said took up too much counter space. The spare room, which Michael had claimed for a home gym that collected dust, then an office where he'd played video games, had become my art studio. Windows faced north, streaming through light I'd cleared of his abandoned exercise equipment. Canvases leaned against walls, works in progress that didn't need to justify their existence or explain their purpose. I'd started painting again 4 months after the divorce began. My hands had trembled holding brushes that felt strange after years of absence. The first painting was terrible. Muddy colors and uncertain strokes. But it was mine. The second was better. By the 8th, I'd remembered who I was before I'd learned to shrink myself into wife-shaped spaces. My teacher's salary, freed from supporting Michael's comic book collection, his streaming subscriptions, his gym memberships he never used, stretched in ways that felt magical. I could afford quality groceries. I could save real money. I could travel. Christmas in New York with Emma wasn't planned. She called one Saturday and said, "Let's go." And for the first time in forever, I could just say yes. We stayed in a tiny apartment in Brooklyn, saw a Broadway show, ate pizza that made us question every pizza we'd ever had. I sent David a postcard from a coffee shop where famous writers used to meet. Found myself. She was here all along. The school art fair came in March, 6 months after my world had rearranged itself. I was manning the display table, explaining my students' projects to parents, when a man approached with 2 cups of hot chocolate. "Miss Peterson?" he asked. "That's me. I'm Daniel Brooks, Mia's dad. She talks about you all the time." He offered me one of the cups. "I remember you mentioned loving mint hot chocolate at the parent conference. The coffee truck had one." I stared at the cup. He'd remembered an offhand comment from 4 months ago about a drink preference. Michael hadn't remembered my drink order after 7 years. Daniel was a single dad, I learned. His wife had left when Mia was 3, leaving him to navigate raising a now 8-year-old daughter alone. He was an architect who worked from home, allowing him to be present for Mia in ways that mattered. She comes home excited from your class, he said, watching Mia show other parents around the art display. Yesterday she spent 4 hours painting because Miss Peterson says art comes from our hearts. You've given her a way to express everything. We talked until the art fair ended. He listened to my stories without interrupting. Laughed at actual jokes rather than the self-deprecating comments I'd trained myself to make. Asked questions that showed he was paying attention. Would you like to get coffee sometime? He asked as we cleaned up. When you're not being surprised with one you didn't ask for? We took it slow. Coffee became lunch, became dinner, became weekend trips to art museums with Mia, who'd appointed herself matchmaker with 8-year-old subtlety. Miss Peterson, she announced one Sunday at the Science Museum, my dad thinks you're pretty and smart and kind. He told Grandpa. Daniel turned red. I laughed. Really laughed for the first time in so long it felt new. A year after that Tuesday announcement, life had settled into rhythms I'd chosen rather than inherited. Emma forwarded me a Facebook post from Susan Peterson asking for prayers for Michael, living in their basement, struggling to find his purpose after a traumatic abandonment. Rachel Martinez was engaged to her yoga instructor, filling Instagram with posts about authentic love with someone who honors truth and commitment. Their wedding hashtag was #NamasteForever. And me? I was sitting in my apartment on a Sunday afternoon, grading papers where students had written essays about their heroes. 5 had chosen their art teacher. Daniel was in my kitchen making his grandmother's secret recipe vegetable soup, filling my space with smells that meant comfort without obligation. Emma was texting from her vacation about our summer trip to Italy. Something we could actually plan now. Michael had been right about one thing. We both needed to find ourselves. He found a 40-year-old man who needed others to hold up his existence, who couldn't function without someone managing his life, who mistook dependency for love. I found a woman who could stand alone so firmly that when someone stood beside her, it was by choice, not necessity. A woman whose life was full of art and travel and students who saw her as heroic. A woman who baked cookies because she wanted to, not because anyone expected it. Turns out I wasn't the one who stayed too long. I was the one who escaped from a life that was never really mine to a life that was entirely my own. If this story of strategic freedom had you rooting for Charlotte from start to finish, hit that like button right now. My favorite part was when Michael tried to serenade the wrong apartment with Rachel's favorite song instead of his wife's. What was your favorite moment of perfect justice? Drop it in the comments below. Don't miss more powerful stories like this. Subscribe to Pretty Tales and hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload.